Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fat.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last episode, we talked about Scrooge was right, and how all the stories about poor old Ebenezer could have just frankly been lies, could have been wrong. I mean, he could have started out life just like you and I, been you and I, frankly, trying to make the world a better place. But just as you and I have discovered, nobody else really cares. Everybody else, frankly, is too busy partying and singing and dancing in the streets to actually care about anything other than themselves. I mean, they don't care about their own lives. They don't care about the lives of their family, their friends, their children, their country, their own world. They just don't care. They want to party. And here's old Scrooge trying to do his very, very best to keep his village, his town, his neighborhood running. And he's the only one doing anything. He's the only one making a living. He's the only one keeping the bulldozers at bay. He's the only one watching the government collapse around them. And then finally, old Scrooge, he just gave up. He threw his life away. I mean, his mind finally snapped. From all of the years, from all of the decades of trying so hard to convince people that they need to spend at least some time during the day working, supporting themselves, earning a living, caring about the world around them. And then one Christmas Eve, he's all alone, his poor, lonely, tortured soul, his heart broken, his dreams crushed because he cared. And then finally, his mind just snapped. And so the following Christmas morning, realizing that he had wasted his entire life caring about his friends, about caring about his family, about losing the only woman, the one woman he actually truly loved, he just gave up. And he ran out in the street and started to sing and dance with the rest of them. He started partying all night, chasing girls, forgot about his job, forgot about his life, forgot about his career. He just gave up. He joined the 99%. It used to be 98%, but now it looks like it's 99%. And so, after old Ebenezer gave up, joined them singing and dancing in the streets, the bulldozers showed up. And they leveled his little village, his little town, his neighborhood. And they plowed everything under, the buildings, the houses, the peoples, the cats, the dogs, the parakeets, leveled it. All buried alive under a layer of asphalt and concrete. And now they are a parking lot. The problem, of course, is that you cannot care all alone. If nobody else cares, if nobody else listens, you really are throwing your entire life away. And old Scrooge, I really feel sorry for him. The truth is, if old Scrooge had given up earlier, if he had just given in and joined the 98% earlier, the cattle, his entire village, his whole town, his entire life, his entire childhood would have been bulldozed down earlier. And maybe, just maybe, old Scrooge could have had a happier, but shorter life. At least he would not have died alone in the gutter, surrounded by drunks and drug addicts, the losers, the cattle, that had made up the whole scope of his entire life. Frankly, I would have moved. Come to think of it, I did, several times, trying to find people who cared, as I was told quite recently by a very kind soul when I was starving. And she stuck a couple €100 into my pocket and said, you need this more than I do. And then she said to me, her very parting words to me were, Charlie, you need to find a better quality of friends. That's what old Ebenezer should have done. He should have moved. He should have forgotten all about the woman who abandoned him just because he was trying to make a difference in the world. He should have just moved and kept moving until he found people of a like mind. And then he wouldn't have been poor old Ebenezer Scrooge. He would have been a good friend and a good ally and a good companion. I've read so many times the history of our world, 100 years ago, there was a tremendous outbreak of pure genius in this world. Pure genius. And every one of those geniuses, those humanitarians, those people who gave of themselves freely to make the world a better place, every single one of them died alone and friendless and penniless. Nikola Tesla, one of the most revered geniuses of our age, who most people don't even know, he died alone and penniless and friendless in a hotel in New York, I think, in 1935. Of course, the FBI showed up immediately and stole all of his paperwork. Someone who isn't very well known but is also a great genius, Nathan Stubblefield. He showed people how to pull energy right out of the earth. He put a couple of metal rods into the ground, made of copper and zinc, I think, and he got free electricity right out of the earth. He died alone, penniless, in the middle of winter, in his cabin. I believe he was in Nebraska. It was just him and his cat. And all of his work was stolen or suppressed. And finally his neighbors went looking for him, and they broke into his cabin. It's the dead of winter. And he's broke. He's got no money. But his cabin was nice and warm and toasty because he got electricity right out of the earth. His neighbors found him dead, and his cat had eaten his eyes because the poor cat was hungry. This is how humanitarians are treated in our world. Frankly, that doesn't interest me. But yes, Ebenezer should have gotten a better quality of friend. And so tonight, I thought we might chat about when your broken toys fight back. And I frankly have spent more than a week now thinking about this particular video episode. And I frankly was waiting for the pieces of the puzzle to fall into place. I sort of figured I knew all of I don't want to say the answers. I figured I had all of the information somewhere in my poor little burnt out brain. But it took more than a week for my subconscious to allow them to fall into place, so I actually had a picture from the puzzle. I knew all the pieces were there. I just hoped they were. But I think I have it now. I think from my point of view, I think I understand what's going on, especially as I review the situation in the USA with the Occupy Wall Street movement, which is exactly the thing that I hoped and prayed for and had faith and belief would happen 11 years ago. 11 years ago, I stood in Los Angeles downtown, December 2000, watched as our world began to die very rapidly around us. And I knew that people would see the horror of this. And I talked, and I discussed, and I yelled, and I screamed, and I begged, and I pleaded, and I talked some more, and I reasoned with people, and nobody cared. But 11 years ago, December 2000, I knew that people would rise up. No, nobody did. I even went and there was a fellow I knew, one of very, very few people I knew, who saw the world the way I did. I mean, I knew about 9/11 10 years, 12 years before it happened, me and a few very rich people who lived in the islands of Seattle. And at the time, we thought it was going to be Saddam Hussein and rockets. So after a while, I stopped going to New York, which was my favorite city, probably in the entire world, because I knew that it was almost time for what turned into the 9/11, the 9/11 emergency attack on New York, which was all phony. But I knew one other gentleman in Los Angeles who knew about these things, and I went to see him. I said, look, I want to meet with you. I want to talk to you. I don't understand what's happening. I will pay you for your time, but I've got to talk to somebody. And so I went over to see this guy, and he flatly refused to take my money. He just looked at me and said, Charlie, you don't need me for this. You can see as clearly as I do. You know what's happening. It's over. It's too late. And that was the last time I saw him. I assume he left town. I mean, I had other things to think about, but looking back on it, I'm assuming he left the country. And that was in December of 2000. In August of 2007, I left the country too. I moved. I was not going to become old Scrooge. I needed to find a better quality of friends. I just didn't realize that's what I was doing. But that's actually what I was doing. I was looking for a better quality of friend. And so I left the USA, the United States of America, because I began watching the country actively die. And nothing I did, nothing I said or yelled or screamed or begged or pleaded to anybody made a difference. And it was always the same. The women would roll their eyes and sigh and shake their heads, and the men just walked away. Nobody cared. And now, 11 years later, I think it's October 2011. I don't get out much, so I don't know what the date is. Let me see. Yeah, it's got to be the 11th of October. And now, 11 years after I knew people would not stand for this, 11 years later, a few people have gotten together. And they're doing exactly what you and I have been discussing now for many, many months. Marching on Wall Street, marching on Washington, D.C. The things that you and I have been talking about. But there aren't a million people in each place. There's a few thousand, maybe. Not enough to make a difference. In the original Revolutionary War 200 years ago, and the number varies, 3%, 5% of the population, people argue about it, was all that took to free the United States of America from Britain. There's not even a tenth of 1% now doing this. So it's not going to be a battle of violence. You're not going to win this war with any kind of weapon at all. Because you see, the bankers have been robbing us for decades, but the last 11 years, the level of betrayal of the bankers and their servants, the politicians, literally have reached biblical levels. And the only way I can think to describe this in a way that would make sense, and I hate doing this, let's look at this like it's a war movie. Let's think that the good guys, are Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia. The bad guys are Darth Vader and his master, the Emperor. Now, the advantage that Darth Vader and his master, the Emperor, have over Luke and Leia and Han and everybody else is that they have knowledge of the Force. They know how the Force works. In this particular case, they know the correct words to use in order to motivate us, to fool us, to trick us. They know exactly the right words. Years ago, you would have called this magic. Magic is the same as science. You probably don't know how the engine in your car works, but you know it does, because it gets you to work and back every day. You know it works, but you don't know how. By that definition, your car is magic. It's not magic, it's science, it's engineering. By the same token, Darth Vader and his master, the Emperor, they know the right words and symbols to use to control you and me. What it really gets down to, the bottom line is our masters, the Emperor, as it were, and his servant Darth Vader, our masters want to destroy the earth. That's it. They want to destroy the earth. They want to rule a dead planet with just 500 million of us left, down on our knees in the mud, worshiping them. And that's really what it gets down to. But what Star Wars called the Force, you and I will call words and symbols. Because words and symbols have tremendous power over us, and we just don't really understand that. In this particular case, this is a battle, this is a war of words. You have to understand that words have a greater power than any physical weapon ever made. Because with the right words, you can remake reality. I mean, with the right words, our masters and their servants, the mandarins, the bankers, the politicians, have pretty much destroyed our world. Or so we think. Because they're using the right words and the right symbols to terrify us into submission. You can call that magic. You can call that science. What it really is really good advertising, marketing. The other thing you really need to understand that this is a war for the entire planet. Whoever wins this war will decide quite literally who lives and who dies. Thankfully, it's not entirely up to Americans in Wall Street or Washington, D.C. right now, at this moment in time. There are tens of thousands of people in Greece fighting in the streets against our masters. They're using violence. It's basic fundamental no, screw you. In Egypt, Egyptians are taking to the streets again. They might finally have realized that the old regime that they thought that they had threw out is still in power. Again, it's just different names answering the phone. They call their new leaders, but in actuality, they're just part of the old regime because the new leaders still work for our masters. The other thing that's really important, specifically for Americans, is that as Americans, we actually, right here today, you and I, live in two totally different worlds. And it's all based on law. It's all based on words and symbols. There is the first world where you and I believe that we're living. You and I actually believe that we're living in a republic made of free men and women, and that the lives we live are based on constitutional law. You and I actually falsely believe that we're living in the United States in a free republic based on the Constitution that 200 years ago our mothers and fathers gave to us. You and I falsely believe that we're living in a free country and we are a free people. That's a lie. Words and symbols. The reality of the situation is you and I do not live under constitutional law. You and I live in another world that we don't even know exists. Words and symbols. You and I are based on commercial law. Our lives, our culture, everything is actually based in the United States on commercial law. Which means that all the words you're using, all the symbols you believe in, are lies. Commercial law, corporate law, consumer law, are all based on British Admiralty law, the law of the ocean. It means, very simply, we are slaves. Words and symbols, and unless you know the right words to say, unless you understand what these symbols that we are shown really mean, unless you understand that everything we do today is based in commercial law, you are doomed. You are a slave. Commercial law is the world that you and I live in every single day as Americans. You don't have to take my word for anything, and please never do. You can look this up. The easiest way to determine whether we live today in the United States under constitutional law, the gift of our mothers and fathers 200 years ago, or commercial law, which the corporations sneaked in under us and now own us by. Go into an American courtroom. Doesn't matter. Any place in the United States of America, go into a courtroom and look at the flag that's in that courtroom. Do you notice the gold braid, the gold trim, the gold ridge around the corners of the flag? Look that up. That is not a flag of the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America. That is a U.S. military flag. So what is a U.S. military flag doing in a civilian court of law? Really simple. The U.S. military is in charge of enforcing commercial law against U.S. citizens, and it's been that way since the 1930s. In the 1930s, the U.S. government declared bankruptcy. The U.S. government defaulted to their British banker owners. And since that time, you and I have not lived in a constitutional republic. You and I are living in a corporate environment. The U.S. military's job, under the default proceedings, was to enforce commercial law against the citizens of the United States of America, who are now employees of a privately owned corporation based in Delaware called United States Incorporated. Words and symbols. The Force. Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. You think you live in a constitutional republic as a free citizen. You do not. You've often heard, I'm sure, we all have heard this, that you or someone you know has been in a U.S. courtroom and has boned up on the U.S. Constitution. And they go in there and they start quoting the U.S. Constitution in what they thought was a U.S. court of law based on constitutional republic. They start quoting the Constitution, at which point the judge cuts them off and in hysteria says, "I will not have the Constitution in my courtroom." That's kind of weird, isn't it? Why would a judge, a U.S. judge, sitting in a U.S. courtroom, say that the Constitution is not allowed in his courtroom? Well, because he knows the truth. You don't. He knows that in his courtroom, there's no such thing as the Constitution. The Constitution does not exist. In his courtroom, it's commercial law, consumer law, corporate law. The Constitution does not exist. Corporate law rules the United States of America today. These are not laws of men and women. Corporate law is the law of bankers and politicians, of the professional liar. Our country has been taken from us, and it's been taken out from under us, under our own feet, and we never even noticed it. See, no one seized power. Nobody stole our country from us. We as individuals gave our power away to the bankers and to the politicians of our own free will. We gave control of our country away because we're stupid. Now, don't feel bad. We've been stupid for generations now. George Washington, our first president, wrote about the loss of our country 200 years ago. Abraham Lincoln, I think it was after the Civil War, so it'd be around 1860-something, he wrote about his fear that the corporations would steal our country away from us. And both of them were right. Sometime in the late 1800s, our masters created a corporation. Now, a corporation is a fictional person. A corporation is basically a paper man, a straw man, a scarecrow, a dummy. It's only real in the eyes of the law. To you and me, it's a man made out of paper. It's a man made out of straw. It's a showroom dummy. But under the eyes of the law, that's a real person. This mannequin, this paper man, this straw man, he can buy and sell things. He can have a bank account. He can hire and fire people. And he, the dummy, the mannequin, is solely responsible for his actions. A paper man, a straw man, a dummy, a mannequin, under the eyes of the law, is a living, breathing person. Now, the law does not recognize the fact that a corporation is nothing but a piece of paper, a fantasy. It's something built out of paper. It's built out of straw. It's not alive. But the law says that the paper man, the straw man, the corporation really is alive. And he, and only he, is responsible for his actions. So if this paper man, this straw man, breaks the law, he goes to jail. Now my question is, how many times have you seen a paper man, a straw man, a mannequin locked up for crimes against us? No, me neither. I've never seen it. Why? Words and symbols. Because the law is a joke. But it's not a funny joke. You and I know the reality of the situation. We know that men and women are behind the straw man, the mannequin, the storefront dummy. You and I know that real men and real women are behind the paper man, the straw man. We know that real men and real women are committing atrocities. They're robbing, raping, stealing, lying, cheating us. But under the law, they're not held responsible for their actions. Under the law, the paper man, the straw man that they control, that they own, takes all the blame for all the crimes that these men and women behind the scenes are committing. Today, we call the straw man, the paper man, a corporation. So when you blame a corporation for stealing your money, you're a fool. Because under commercial law, which is what the United States is functioning under, you can blame the corporation all you want for stealing your money, for stealing your pension, for foreclosing on your home. That's okay, because you see, the corporation is just a piece of paper. The corporation is a dummy, a straw man. The corporation didn't do anything to you. It's the men and the women who own the corporation, the heartless, thinking, breathing creatures, the one with blood in their veins, who are hiding behind the paper man, hiding behind the straw man, hiding behind the symbol that is the corporation. They're the real monsters. They're pulling the strings. You and I know that. But we continually, as human beings, we react emotionally. We say, Bank of America robbed us. No, it didn't. Bank of America is a piece of paper. It's the people who own Bank of America who robbed us. Under the law, the corporation is a real person. But you and I know that a corporation is just a piece of paper. So maybe, if I could suggest, we concentrate, instead of saying Bank of America robbed us, let's instead identify the people on the board of directors, the shareholders, the president, the CEO. Let's name them. Let's talk about them. Not the straw man, not the corporation that they control. The thing about having a corporation in the United States of America, United States, Inc., is that once you're done robbing and raping and lying and cheating and stealing in the name of Bank of America, the law says that Bank of America is responsible, not you. So what do? You take your hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, you sell your interest in Bank of America, you quit your job, and you go work for another corporation, another straw man, because you have friends at that same level. And these friends, as friends normally do, they trade back and forth. You need a job, Frank? I got a job for you. That's how it works. You just buy into another corporation hires you, and you're working for yet another paper man. You're working again for a straw man. You're working for a piece of paper, and the piece of paper gets blamed for everything you do. So here's the thing, you can be a fool. Words and symbols. You can be as mad and as angry and as outraged as you want to be against a piece of paper. And our masters, under commercial law, they'll just laugh at you because you don't know what is really happening in the world you live in. The truth is, the words and the symbols control us. And unless you know the right words to say, in the right sequence, you will lose. You don't really know what the words you're saying really mean, not under commercial law. If you continue with the fantasy that you're living in a fairy tale world called a constitutional republic, if you believe that you live in the United States of America under constitutional law, you can march all you want, you can bang drums, you can sing songs, you can hand out flowers, and you can sing Kumbaya. And it means nothing. Commercial law is the law of corporations, of bankers, and politicians. Constitutional law is the law of man. And when you confuse those two, you're going to lose. So, if I might again make the suggestion, forget about the corporations. Name names. Name the names of the people behind the corporations and hold them personally responsible for their actions. Their actions that, under constitutional law, they can be blamed for. But here's the catch. Under commercial law, the people who really committed these atrocities at Bank of America, they cannot be held responsible under commercial law for their actions. Does that sound bizarre? It probably sounds bizarre because it is. But that's the heart of commercial law. But on the other hand, the moment you start naming names of the real flesh and blood people, the cowards, committing atrocities in the name of corporations, in the name of straw men, and blaming the piece of paper that says Bank of America, the moment you start naming them in public, listing their actions, listing their crimes, you will see grown men and women in their $5,000 suits crying like little babies and wetting themselves in fear because you know what? They actually are people. And they can be afraid too, just like you and I can be afraid of losing our homes, losing our jobs, losing our families. Because these are people with souls. And if you have a soul, you can be hurt. The truth of the matter is, you and I will never see our masters, and frankly, trust me, you don't want to. Can you imagine running into Darth Vader at the supermarket? Now, if you think Darth Vader is scary, imagine what meeting his master would be like. That's something none of us want to ever meet. I'm telling you now. But we see Darth Vader every single day. He's a politician, he's a banker, but he's working for somebody. He's a mandarin. He's a servant of the masters. Let's just deal with them. If we can get rid of the mandarins, the masters will have nobody to work for them. And trust me, the masters don't work. They only control. If you make the mandarins afraid, the masters will have no one to work for them, and they'll leave us alone. They'll find easier prey because they're cowards. So let's focus on the Mandarin class, Bushes, Cheneys, Rice, Brown, Bernanke, because frankly, they are expendable to their masters, and they know that they are expendable to their masters. They know that their masters will write them off in a heartbeat. The moment we as a people point at them and say, you robbed us, this is a list of your crimes, and we want you in prison. The masters will write them off instantly because at that point, these mandarins are no longer of any use to them. They've compromised themselves. But you have to know the right words to use. You need to know the right magic spell. And you need to say the words in the right order, at the right time, in the right places, or you will lose. Guess what? You don't know how to do any of this. And neither do I. But I think I can point you in the right direction of one man who does. This is a man who spent at least the last 50 years of his life studying the secrets of our masters. And I'm guessing that he can guide you through the magical words that you need to unlock commercial law, overpower our masters, the mandarins, and take the country back. I've never met this man. I've never met him. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. But I have followed his work for a number of years. His name is Jordan Maxwell. I've never spoken to him. He has no idea who I am. But like I said, I've been following his work for years, and frankly, he can be your Obi-Wan Kenobi. He can be your Yoda. In my opinion, Jordan Maxwell is your Yoda. I'm not speaking for Mr. Jordan Maxwell. As I said, I've never met him, don't know him. He wouldn't know me from anybody. But if I were you, and I was facing Darth Vader, I would want somebody on my side who knew the ways of the Force, who knew the right words and symbols, know what those words really mean, know what those symbols really mean, and who knows what to say at the right time, exactly the right way, and you'll wipe the floor with Darth Vader. I learned the power of words in a very educational country, at least for me, a place called New Zealand. I'm from the United States. I speak a version of English, which I thought was universally known and recognized in every other English-speaking language in the country. But it's not. When I was in New Zealand, I learned, very painfully, that the version of English that I spoke is not spoken in New Zealand. It was exactly the same language, but it was different. Because the reality is words are just sounds. Words are just noises that we make that supposedly mean something specific to each of us. The words and the noises we make convey ideas, concepts, thoughts. And I believe that because the people of my tribe, my nation, the United States, agree that certain words that we make, certain sounds we make, mean certain things, convey certain ideas. That when I was in New Zealand, they would convey the same thoughts and ideas. I was completely wrong. Completely wrong, as is every other high-end professional who's ever been lured to New Zealand and destroyed. Because we were actually people coming from a different tribe, a different nation. It's the same noises, it's the same sounds, it's the same words, but the meanings were completely different. And because we used the words in the wrong order, in the wrong way, it was very apparent we were not of the people of New Zealand. And this is how they mark strangers in New Zealand. If you don't know the correct words to use, the correct sounds to make, in the correct order, they know instantly you are not of the people. You are not of their tribe. You have not been indoctrinated to live and work in New Zealand. So if you're not of the people, that means that you're not a human being. If you are not of the people, you're an animal. They're free to hate you, to hurt you, to destroy you, because you are not of the people. You're not human. You're an animal. You're a thing. And things don't have any feelings. The power of words is one thing, but you must know what those words mean in the culture where you are. Now, to our masters, to Darth Vader and to his master, the Emperor, you and I are not of the people. And naturally, that makes you and me animals, just things. And to our masters, it's fun to hurt just things. Now, what would happen if suddenly you had Yoda at your side, if suddenly you had Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they teach you to speak the language of the people? In this case, our masters who control 98% of our country. What if all of a sudden we spoke their language? What if we spoke the language of commercial law exactly the same way our masters and their servants, the politicians, the bankers, spoke the law? What if all of a sudden we turned up knowing exactly the right word to use and the right sequence of words to use, speaking fluent commercial law? What if we could face our masters on an equal footing? Because now we speak their language. And in black magic, satanic ritual, under U.S. maritime law, under commercial law, corporate law, consumer law, if you know the language and speak it correctly, you will terrify our masters out of their minds. Violence isn't necessary. Violence is a waste of time. Violence is the quickest way to lose this war. If you resort to violence, you have lost the war even before you began, because that's what our masters want. Never, ever, ever fight a battle the way your enemy wants you to fight. Our masters want us to resort to violence so they can wipe us out. Don't do it. Remember, quantum physics, you become the thing that you hate. Do not hate anyone. Do what is necessary. So you need to know the right words and the right combinations of words to win this battle. And since we outnumber our masters and the Mandarins millions to one, the war will be over before you even know it, and you will have won. But you need your Obi-Wan Kenobi. You need your Yoda first. You need to have someone at your side telling you what's really going on, deciphering the words and the symbols used in commercial law, which are used to control us. Because honestly, if you lose this battle, you lose the war. And this is a war for the planet. As I said, people in Greece are rioting by the tens of thousands. Just a few years back, the people of Iceland rioted very peacefully. They refused the bankers. They're still alive. They're still well. They're free. They're doing great. They understood the nature of commercial law, and they said no. So now, in the United States, you need to know the right words. The spoken word has limitless power. The written word has infinite power. So you have to stop thinking that you are a citizen of a constitutional republic called the United States of America. You are, in reality, an employee of a privately owned corporation in Delaware called United States, Inc. And with these words and symbols, they control us. You need to be able to speak fluent commercial law, or you're doomed. But you need your Obi-Wan Kenobi. You need your Darth Vader. You need to fight your Darth Vader. Right now, 99% of the USA is owned by British corporations, British banks. Now, Barack Obama, also known as Barry Soetoro, a man born in Kenya, I realized the other day, actually makes him a British citizen. So right now, the United States is being ruled by a president who is a British citizen. Which means after 200 years, The British Empire has reclaimed the United States for its own. British corporations and banks own 99% of the country, and they've been stealing from us for decades. They'll loan us money. They'll then steal the money they loaned us. They'll then loan us more money. Basically, they're loaning our own money back to us at horrible interest. And then they steal it again and do it again. Security Pacific Bank used to do this to me. I would get money deposited into their central account, into their bank account, and it would clear into their bank account. But for no obvious reason, they would hold my money in their bank account at Security Pacific while I was writing checks. The next thing I know, I'm being charged interest. They're loaning me my own money because they never actually cleared it into my bank account for at least 2 weeks. It took me years to figure that out. And that's basically what they're doing to us now. Again, it's under commercial law. But you need your Yoda. You need your own Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now again, I've never met Mr. Jordan Maxwell. I don't know the man personally. But I strongly advise you to contact this man. He's been doing this for 50 years. I would advise you to contact this man and to hire him instantly. You can find him at jordanmaxwell.com. JordanMaxwell.com. Because you need a wordsmith. You need a master magician who can speak the spells. That will free all of us. Now, I think the easiest way to get you up to speed on Mr. Jordan Maxwell is to go to YouTube, really, and do a keyword search, and do it exactly this way. At YouTube, do a keyword search, Rense, R-E-N-S-E, space, Jordan, J-O-R-D-A-N, space, Maxwell, M-A-X-W-E-L-L. And I say this very specifically for a very specific reason, because over the years, people have tried to discredit Jordan Maxwell by putting up phony videos on YouTube on him. If you do this keyword search, Rense Jordan Maxwell, you will find interviews of Mr. Jordan Maxwell done by Mr. Jeff Rense from rense.com, R-E-N-S-E. I would suggest you start with YouTube so you get to know what Mr. Jordan Maxwell looks like, what he sounds like, and listen to real interviews. I suggest this because, frankly, his website's very confusing. Nothing against the gentleman personally. My website's very confusing. You can go to rense.com, R-E-N-S-E.com, and look up Mr. Jordan Maxwell there. But again, there's a lot of information there. The quickest, easiest, cleanest way to get up to speed on how Mr. Jordan Maxwell can help you is to look him up on YouTube. He's been fighting this battle for longer than some of us have been alive. This is a war, and I'm sorry. It is a war. And if you lose this war, you lose the planet. You're dealing with not nice people. You're dealing with people who worship Satan, who have based their entire lives for the last 8,000 years on the worship of Satan. It doesn't matter if you believe in the devil or not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. It doesn't matter. Our masters do. And unless you deal with that very simple fact, you will lose. Unless you speak the language of our masters, commercial law, you will lose. You need to know and understand what the words and the symbols that they use to control us really mean. And if I might suggest, Mr. Jordan Maxwell is somebody you need to listen to. He's someone you need to hire. Just bring him to New York and then just let him talk. You will learn more in one afternoon with Mr. Jordan Maxwell than you've learned in your entire life about the country you really live in. And once you speak their language, you can destroy them. without a shot being fired. It's your choice. May you live as long as you wish. May you love for as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel finding his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race. Their black magic captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.